Hi, welcome back to another episode of Anyone Can Paint. We're going to pick up where we left off last week. We were putting some of the highlights in our trees. I got just a few trees to go, and I made a splotch there on purpose so you could see how you can change that. I'm going to go back to my worn out large flat bristle brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and get the undercolor painting, which was some blue and green. And all you're going to do is the exact same technique as you did when you applied the highlights. You're just going to go in here and just kind of dab. Now, one of two things are going to happen. As you do this, this works out to be just fine and you don't have to re-highlight it. But sometimes you may go in there and have to, if you hit too much of it, then you have to re-highlight it. So re-highlighting is the worst case scenario. So you just want to come in and lightly touch this, and all you're doing is thinning that out so it's not as blobby. And then it goes away. So if you happen to, especially that can happen when you reload your brush and maybe you don't have, or you have more paint on your brush than what you thought, and you lightly hit it and it just goes. So I mean, it's a common thing that can happen. We're going to knock out the rest of these trees, then we can move on to start to put together our little farm scene. This is going to be yellow with just a touch of orange to it. And boy, there's not much orange, is there? That's all right, we'll go with this. Remember, light touches, keep your brush moving, and it's good to allow the dark to come through. I'll try this again. More yellow, more orange. And we'll do this little guy over here. Anyway, we'll just use the same color over here because I think that's going to get covered up for the most part. Since we've already got this loaded, we'll just go with this. There. Then we can clean out the brush. And then we're going to start underpainting the some of the buildings and things here. And I kind of sketched this back in because we had covered that up when we did the field back there. I'm going to use the medium flat bristle brush. Again, make sure you get it wet before you get it going. And I'm going to use some blue and brown in whatever proportion you want. And again, don't feel like you have to really get that blended very well. I'm just going to put in the shape of the roof on the big building first. Going to reload. Then there's a part that comes down that actually is a separator between this larger building and this next one. And then this is the roof on the building that's joined up with this bigger one. Again, don't worry if you've got too much blue or too much brown. You just need a dark color here. And this is the side. Grab more paint and be right back. And I'm just going to change this color a little bit so you can tell what the difference here is. This is going to be the face or the front of the barn. Not the sunlit side, but of the barn itself, it's the face of the barn. And there's a building that's attached on this side. A little bit more color. There, so that's in. All right, then we're going to come over and we're going to put that building in. Go back to the blue and the brown. And this one is going to partially be covered by that tree. So there's going to be the roof line there. And the front eave, the back eave, the back corner, the front corner. That's going to come down. Remember that the front corner, when a building is on an angle, the front corner needs to be the longest corner in length. Your stroke needs to be longest. Then this one would be shorter. And if you could see this back one, that one would be shorter also. And that's just going to work back something like that. The roof line goes there, so we'll just darken this in. And we'll do the side. And again, just work that back end. Again, that's where that tree is going to go. So just kind of work that back in and just softly blend that. And then on the front side, I'll make that a little bit lighter just again so you can make some sense out of this. And this will be the sunlit side. Now this area that's in here is all going to be dirt. So let's go ahead and get that blocked in. We're going to clean this one out. And then we're going to go to the large flat bristle brush, and we're going to go again in some blue and brown. However, this time we're going to put a little bit more brown to it. And you can just mix that right in that same pile you've been using. Now this little building is going to end up going away, and we'll put that one back in, but we need to get this dirt in here first. Just kind of run that right up against the bottom edge of your large building. And this is going to go back in here a little bit. And then of course in this open area. And this is all going to get much brighter for the most part. Again, on all your edges, make sure you just kind of soften those up. In fact, you know what? Let's just underpaint this whole thing, because this is where the pumpkin patch actually is going to be. So this is going to get the dirt. This is going to be a process where we're going to get the dirt in first, the underpainting. We'll go through and highlight it. Then we've got to get some of those vines and some of the growth going. We'll highlight those, and then we'll start dunking pumpkins in there. So blue and brown, and you can just grab this right on your brush, just like that. Just bring it up here. And again, it's not important that you have it all one flat color, but where it's a little bit more important is you want to make sure that you have an even amount of paint. You don't want it real thick over here and real thin over here. So just kind of work this to where it's a fairly even distribution of paint on your canvas. But don't worry about your brush strokes, and don't worry if you've got more blue in an area than brown, and vice versa. And we're going to have a little fence that goes through there. This is all going to be foliage behind it. So just kind of work this up on the bottom edge of that. But you can see brush strokes aren't not a concern. That's a little bluer than over here. Again, it's not a thing to worry about. This is just the underpainting. So when we put the highlights in this dirt, some of this underpainting will show through. Sometimes it won't. So you got to be ready for the areas that will. So that's why we got to cover this whole thing. Again, just kind of go back and make sure you just don't have areas that are really, really thick. One of the questions I get asked in classes all the time, is, especially when you're doing the underpainting stage, is that sometimes as you're spreading this around, especially as you start using up the paint that's on your brush, you kind of just try to get the last little bit out of it. And sometimes you get little areas, and really not so much here, but you'll have little white showing. And what all that is that those are areas that the canvas is starting to show through, that you just didn't have very much paint on your brush when you did that. So consequently, the paint's not very thick right there. And normally, it's not a big deal if that happens, because it's going to get covered up. But you can see right here, if I was just to leave this, again, it's not a big deal in this painting, but you can see where some of the canvas is showing through. And that's just areas where I just have not put as much paint on there as I have areas that you can't see through. So if that bothers you, if you're concerned and that's happened to you before, that's all that is that you just didn't put very much paint there. And it's just the canvas kind of peeking through. And I just go over this again just to make sure that it's fairly even distribution of paint. That way it dries out relatively evenly. Because as you know, if you have not done something like this before and you got it on thicker, it takes longer for that to dry. Go ahead and clean out the brush. Make sure you towel dry it off. What we're going to do next, while we're letting this barn kind of set up, and it's going pretty well, so we're going to put in the foliage. There's a series of bushes that go over here, and there's a couple that go back in this area, and some over in here. So we're going to go ahead and get those in while this is kind of setting up. So what we're going to start with, make sure you get it wet, towel dry it off, is this is going to be some brown and a little bit of yellow. And this is going to be our first layer. And I'm just putting let me go back down to the palette. I'm just going to do like this, where I just put the brush right on the canvas, and I'm using the corner of the brush. I just kind of wiggle this, and you're just going to get some really interesting edges to this, because these are bushes that are, again, further back. But I just keep the brush right on the canvas. And I'm going to go right up on the bottom edge of the side of that barn. Now, some of this you're going to see better than others. Maybe I'll put a little yellow with that so it shows up a little bit better. There we go. You can see I'm just kind of squiggling the brush around just to kind of get some little bushy edges. Don't make them all even across. Just work that down kind of like that. And then we're going to build layers. Now you can see already it kind of accidentally happens. It looks like that layer is in front of that one. And it's just because I don't overblend my brush, and you just get these little subtle color changes. So let's go to let's get some green in that color. Now it's always good to change your colors up so you can see the layering effect here. And again, this is just putting again some thickness of bushes in this. And I'll lightly blend out the next. You see how you get layering like that? Maybe we'll go a little bit darker and add some blue to that color, because there's some yellow in there that's going to make that green a little darker. And we're going to end up covering up the post here in a second. But that's all right. Let's go over on this side with the same color. Just grabbing more of my brush. And this is just going to start here. Heck, let's do this. Let's get this a little bit lighter so you can see it easier. Just adding yellow to this color. Again, I'm not taking my brush off the canvas at all. You can kind of hear I'm scrubbing, but I'm using the corner of the brush, and it's to get these nice little uneven edges. Just going to work that all the way across. I'm going to grab a little bit more paint. I'll be right back. Now I'm going to come in with maybe a little bit darker green. Maybe add some blue to this. And I'm just working in the same pile. And you want this to be a little bit darker up against there. Again, there's that contrast that we've talked about. Just to show another layer. Just bring that right down to your dirt area. All right, let's go back. We'll just do another little bit here. Let's incorporate some of this orange. What the heck? we'll do some orange and maybe a little bit of yellow and some green just to give us a different color here. That didn't change it too much. Let's put a little bit more orange and a little yellow in that. There we go. Again, I'm just holding the brush down and just a series of squiggly strokes. And just work that down like that. But you can see how you just get layers of bushes like that. But you always want to make sure you change the color up a little bit because that's what separates the one from the other. Let's put a little bit of that color over here just so it kind of helps balance this out a little bit. We'll just put a little bit like this. Again, we're going to have like a little fence line that goes across there. And that can just fade out, just as long as something's in there. There. And you can clean that up. Now we're going to go back into our building because the roof's pretty much set up on that. And this is going to be kind of look like one of those kind of tin buildings. We're not going to put any kind of shingles on there, but maybe it's like a metal building. So this is going to be a process. We're going to work with some colors. We're going to do that part of the roof, which is on the main building, the same as what's down here on this second building that's attached to that one. So we're going to start with some white, a little bit of brown, the burnt sienna, and again, we're going to start with this. There we go. And you want to follow your roof line. And if you want to have some of that underpainting show through, that's perfectly fine. But just make your strokes go along the same angle as what your roof line is. So you can see that angle of the roof goes like that. And these strokes need to be going in that same direction. And this comes down right to the end, which is right in there. I'm going to reload my brush. I'll be right back. Goes just like that. So just work that down. And we're going to leave that like that for now. And we'll see how that dries. We can go back and enhance that and everything else. Now we're going to reload the brush and we're going to do this second roof. And that goes like this and comes down to about there. And then you can fill that in again. You want your strokes to go in the same direction as your roof line is. Good. Let's, with that same color, even though this is going to be in some shadows, we need to put a little bit of light that hits right here. Right on that edge of that eave. And also on this, I just stuck my finger into the paint. And right on this one too. And I just got my brush to a chiseled edge and I'm just going through and just lightly touching and just bringing that color down. Just like that. All right, let's clean that out. Okay, now we're going to be making the colors for our barn itself. Now, remember our sunlight's coming in from the left, so it's hitting that. We're going to have to brighten that part a little bit there. This is going to be in shadow for the most part. So this is going to be a combination of some white and some brown and a little bit of blue. So this is going to be a gray color. Maybe a little bit more brown in this. And a little bit more white. There we go. Something like that. And we're going to come up here to the side of the barn. And we're just going to make, again, basically vertical strokes. And just come right down from that roof line. And just lightly touch the canvas. And it's good to see some indications of some boards and things. We can go back and enhance that a little bit. And we need to put a little bit here. Again, this is, again, vertical strokes. I think I'm going to add a little bit more blue and brown to this just so we can change that color up. It's kind of close to what our roof is. Maybe a little bit more. Yeah, that's a little bit better. We're going to change our roof color a little bit anyway, so just work that down. Now on the side of the barn, which is actually the front, but that's in the shadow side. Now we're going to add some blue to this color. And we're going to do basically the same thing. We're just going to make a series of vertical strokes. And see how bluish gray this is? That's exactly what you want. And again, we'll go through and we'll put some doors and windows and everything else in this. But these again are all just basically vertical strokes. And we can do the same thing to the side of this building because that would be in shadow since we've got that color. Just take that right from the roof line right down. Now we still have to brighten that up and we still have to work on our roof area here. In fact, in our roof we can add some brown and some blue. A little bit more brown maybe. And we'll just kind of put some of this in. Now you don't have to cover up all the dark here. This can just kind of be spotty. Then we need to darken up where the roof and the wall, or the outside wall meet. Put a little cast shadow in there. And again, we're still going to have this pretty large tree that comes in here. It's going to cover some of that up. So don't be real concerned about that right now. Let's go ahead and clean the brush out. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go in with our small flat bristle brush and we will incorporate some doors and some openings in this. So this is where we're going to mix our dark color that we use. It's mostly blue, a little bit of brown, and this will make that dark color that's almost like black. And let's go up to the canvas. Now we're going to put in our door, the large door that would go here. So this is, you want to watch your angles here, and that's going to be what the top of the door is. And just however wide you want that rascal to be. Whatever is good for you. I'm going to reload and I'll be right back. And we're going to put a little window up here that would be up in this loft area. It's going to be right like that. And then over here maybe there's an entry door. And I'm just going to turn my brush vertically. And maybe there's a window there. Again, just to suggest. All right. Let's wipe a little of this color off of our brush. And let's go up in our roof and see what this does. Should wipe a little bit more up, huh? And I just want to get that so it's not quite as bright. Kind of tone it down. So I'm just kind of, this is almost would be considered a wash or a dry brush, where you're just putting a little bit on just to kind of coat that color a little bit. And I globbed it down there. I don't want that to look like there's a hole there, so I'll go back and touch that up. Now, I'm going to stay with this brush, and we're going to switch colors, and I'm going to put a little bit of highlighting on that building there. This is going to be some white, some brown, some blue, so you can just kind of lighten up that color that we've been using. And this goes in, and you want to follow your roof line down, and just do nice light strokes. And again, we can always go in there and put some detail work with to make it look like there's some separation of boards and things, but this needs to be lighter than what's on the side of it. There. And I'm just going to grab some of that color and put that on the roof. We'll see how that works. All right, let's clean that out. I think what I'm going to do to that side is just add a little bit more brown to that color. That's what I want right there. That's exactly it. Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you don't. Put it over there. And this is about as far as we're going to get this week. When we come back, we'll finish up one of these buildings. We still got another building to get in. Let's go ahead and clean that out. And then we can maybe start putting some highlights in our dirt that's going to be in the pumpkin area. But hope you try this. This is going to be a little bit different. You got to go after this. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Remember, anyone can paint.